This story is titled, My Freeloading Sister Entered My Room Without My Permission and Stole the Money I Had Been Saving for My Children's Christmas. Now she'll be spending Christmas in jail. Hey everyone, before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. Alright, buckle up, because this story's one for the books. So, I'm a single mom of 2 kids. Life's not exactly glamorous, but I've worked my butt off to give my kids a safe, happy home. Things were going all right. We weren't rich or anything, but we were okay. Then, like a storm blowing into my peaceful little bubble, my sister Sarah shows up on my doorstep. Now, Sarah's always been a walking disaster. She's 29, but you'd think she was 19 with the way she handles her life. No job, no savings, no plan, just vibes. She'd been evicted from her apartment because she couldn't make rent after getting fired. We'll get to that later. And now she's got her 3-year-old son in tow, looking at me like I'm her last hope. I'm not heartless, okay? I could have slammed the door in her face, but how do you say no when your sister's standing there with a kid on her hip, looking like she's been through hell? So, against my better judgment, I said yes. I told her she could stay with me until she got back on her feet. I figured, how bad could it be? Yeah, very bad. My house isn't exactly spacious. My kids already share a room, and now I've got Sarah and her son crashing in the living room. I gave up my privacy, my peace, and honestly, my sanity, thinking I was doing the right thing. For the first couple of weeks, it wasn't terrible. Sarah tried to help out around the house. She'd wash dishes once in a while or take out the trash. Her son, bless his little heart, was actually well-behaved most of the time. I started to think maybe I'd overestimated how bad this would be. But then Ryan, her so-called boyfriend, showed up. Let me paint you a picture of Ryan. He's in his late 30s, unemployed, and somehow still thinks he's God's gift to the world. He's the kind of guy who talks big, but never follows through on anything. Vaping constantly, dirty sneakers, and an ego that's way too big for someone who can't even hold down a job. He wasn't even living with Sarah when she got evicted, but now, suddenly, he's hanging around my house like he's part of the furniture. At first, it was occasional visits, annoying but manageable. Then, it turned into him showing up every single day. I'd come home from work, and there he'd be, parked on my couch like he owned the place, eating and watching TV. I confronted Sarah about it, told her flat out that I didn't want Ryan in my house, especially when I wasn't there. She gave me this whole, I get it, I'm sorry, it won't happen again, spiel. And then, it happened again, and again. The disrespect was unreal, but I kept trying to play nice. I didn't want to cause a scene in front of my kids, and honestly, I felt bad for Sarah. She was clearly going through a rough time, and I figured maybe she just needed support. That's what I told myself anyway. Looking back, I should have kicked her out the second Ryan became a regular fixture. Then, the weird stuff started happening. At first, it was little things. My makeup bag would be in the wrong spot, or my hairbrush would be missing from the bathroom. I thought maybe I was just misplacing stuff. I mean, I'm a busy mom, right? But then it escalated. I came home one day and found my closet door wide open. Now, I'm super anal about my closet. I always close it because my youngest loves to dig through my shoes, and I don't need that chaos in my life. So, seeing it open set off alarm bells. I asked my kids if they'd been in my room, and they swore up and down they hadn't. I believed them because, honestly, it didn't feel like something they'd do. My oldest is 10 and knows better, and my youngest is too scared of mom's mean voice to sneak into my room. That left one other possibility, Sarah. But I didn't have proof, and confronting her without proof felt messy. What if I was wrong? What if I was just being paranoid? So, instead of blowing up, I decided to get smart. I ordered a little security camera off Amazon, one of those cheap ones you can hide on a shelf. I set it up in my room, angled toward my closet and dresser. I didn't tell anyone. Not Sarah. Not my kids. I figured if someone was snooping, I'd catch them. And oh boy, did I catch them. It took about a week. The first few nights, nothing happened. I started to think maybe I'd been imagining things. But then, one afternoon, I came home from work and decided to check the footage. And there she was. Sarah. Plain as day, walking into my room while I was at work. She went straight for my dresser, pulling open drawers, rummaging through my jewelry box. My heart sank. This wasn't just curiosity. She was looking for something. I kept watching. And a couple of days later, there was Ryan. This dude, who doesn't even live here, standing in my room, going through my stuff like it was a shopping spree. I was furious. The entitlement, the audacity. It was too much. They weren't even trying to hide it. They spent a good 20 minutes one day, digging through my closet, pulling out my handbags, and then trying to put everything back like I wouldn't notice. At that moment, I knew I couldn't let this slide, but I didn't want to confront them just yet. I wanted to make sure I had everything lined up. So, I waited. I checked the footage every day, and every day there was more. Sarah, Ryan, sometimes even together, snooping through my room while I was out busting my ass at work. It felt like a betrayal on a level I couldn't even process. Sure, I had all the proof I needed. Clear footage of Sarah and Ryan snooping through my room like they were on a treasure hunt. You'd think that would be enough to kick their asses out right then and there, but I wanted to play it smart. If I went off without a plan, Sarah would twist the situation and somehow make me the bad guy. So, I waited, stewing in my anger and trying to figure out my next move. The tipping point came a few days later. I came home from work, and my bedroom door was locked. That immediately set off alarms because I'm the only one with a key, and I never lock it unless I'm inside. My stomach dropped. I jiggled the handle, and sure enough, it was locked tight. I banged on the door, yelling, "Who's in there?" No answer. My blood was boiling at this point. I grabbed the spare key from my kitchen drawer, unlocked the door, and walked into pure chaos. My dresser drawers were open, my closet was a mess, and one of my handbags, the one I'd been using to save cash for my kids' Christmas, was missing. That bag wasn't just sitting out. It was buried under several other purses, tucked away in a corner of my closet. Whoever took it knew exactly what they were looking for. My heart sank because I knew. I knew it was Sarah and Ryan. I dropped everything and checked the footage from the camera. There it was. Sarah, bold as hell, walking into my room earlier that day with Ryan right behind her. They didn't just look around. They tore through my things like animals. And then, clear as day, Sarah pulled out the handbag, opened it, and pocketed the cash. $3,500. Gone. You don't understand how hard I'd worked to save that money. Late nights, skipped meals, and sacrificing every little treat I might have wanted for myself, all so my kids could have an amazing Christmas. And here comes Sarah, taking it like it was her money, like I owed her something. I couldn't even cry. I was too angry to cry. I called Sarah immediately, but of course she didn't pick up. I called again. Nothing. I texted her, "Where the hell are you? We need to talk now." No response. The audacity of this woman to not only steal from me, but then ghost me like she wasn't hiding something. It was unbelievable. Hours later, Sarah and Ryan finally showed up. They walked in all casual, like they hadn't just ransacked my room. That was it for me. I stood in the living room, arms crossed, and said, "Where's my money?" Sarah stopped dead in her tracks. "What money?" she asked, feigning innocence like she didn't know exactly what I was talking about. "The $3,500 you stole from my handbag? Don't even try to play dumb, Sarah. I have it all on camera." Her face turned pale, and Ryan started shifting uncomfortably. "I didn't take anything," she stammered. "You must have misplaced it." "Misplaced it? Are you kidding me?" "Cut the crap," I snapped. "I saw the footage. You and Ryan were in my room, going through my stuff. You took the handbag, and you took the money. Don't even try to lie to me." That's when Sarah broke down, crocodile tears and all. "I didn't have a choice," she sobbed. "I needed it for bills, for my son." The nerve of her to drag her kid into this mess. I wanted to scream, but I kept my cool. "Bills? Don't give me that. You've been living here rent-free, eating my food, using my electricity, and this is how you repay me?" Ryan, of course, tried to play the tough guy. "You don't have to talk to her like that," he said, stepping forward like he was going to intimidate me. Big mistake. I looked him dead in the eye and said, "You don't get to talk to me at all. You don't pay rent, you don't contribute, and you're not welcome here. So unless you're about to hand me $3,500, shut your mouth." I told Sarah she had until the end of the day to give me my money back, or I was calling the cops. She started pleading, saying she didn't have it anymore. "What do you mean you don't have it?" I asked. That's when she admitted she and Ryan had already spent most of it, on takeout, gas, and other nonsense. My jaw hit the floor. "You're telling me you blew $3,500 in a matter of hours? Are you serious right now?" She kept crying, and Ryan just stood there like an idiot. I told them both to get out of my house. "You've got until tonight to figure out how to pay me back," I said. "And if you don't, I'm pressing charges." Sarah tried to guilt me. "You're really going to call the cops on your own sister? What about my son? What about family?" That was the last straw for me. "Family?" I shot back. "Family doesn't steal from each other. Family doesn't lie and manipulate. You're not family. You're a leech. Now get out." By 8 p.m., Sarah still hadn't paid me back. I'd given her a chance, but she clearly wasn't taking me seriously. So I did what I had to do. I called the police. Filing that report was one of the hardest things I've ever done. Not because I felt bad for Sarah, hell no, but because it felt like the final nail in the coffin of whatever relationship we had left. I gave the cops the footage, told them everything, and waited. Sarah and Ryan had bolted when the cops showed up at my house. I wasn't surprised. Cowards always run when they're caught. The police took down all the details and put out a warrant for their arrest. The cops left my house after filing the report, telling me they'd do their best to track down Sarah and Ryan. I stood there, looking around at my now quiet living room, feeling this weird mix of anger, betrayal, and, honestly, relief. It wasn't over, not by a long shot, but at least I'd taken a step to protect myself and my kids. I just didn't expect how messy it was about to get. The next morning, I was getting my kids ready for school when my phone buzzed. A number I didn't recognize popped up. I almost ignored it, but something told me to answer. "Hello?" I said. "It's Sarah," she mumbled. Her voice sounded small, like she'd just woken up or been crying all night. "Please don't do this. I didn't mean to steal the money, it's just, Ryan made me do it. You know how he is." There it was. The classic blame game. I wasn't falling for it. "Don't even try that, Sarah," I said. "You're a grown-ass woman. You made a choice. You went into my room, you took my money, and now you're dealing with the consequences." She started sobbing, going on about how she had no place to go, how Ryan was angry with her, and how she was worried about what would happen to her son. And okay, I'll admit, there was a tiny part of me that felt bad for her. Not for what she did, but for the fact that she'd let her life spiral so far out of control. But then I remembered what she did to me and my kids, and that sympathy disappeared real quick. "I've already called the cops, Sarah," I told her. "You and Ryan need to turn yourselves in. You don't get to just run away from this." Her tone flipped in an instant. "You're really doing this to your own sister? After everything I've been through?" That was it. I hung up. I wasn't about to let her manipulate me into dropping the charges. If she wanted to play victim, she could do it in front of a judge. But of course, Sarah wasn't going down without causing more drama. Later that day, I got another call, this time from my dad. Now, my dad's not exactly the step up and handle things type. He's more of a stay out of it until it gets too loud to ignore guy. So when he called, I already knew what he was going to say. "Can't we handle this as a family?" he started. "You know Sarah's had a tough time. Maybe she made a mistake, but calling the cops? Isn't that a bit much?" "Dad," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "this isn't about a mistake. She stole $3,500 from me. That's not a mistake. That's a choice. And it wasn't just the money. She's been lying, sneaking around, and letting Ryan disrespect my home. I've put up with enough." He sighed, that heavy, disappointed dad sigh. "But she's your sister, and I'm her sister," I shot back. "Did that stop her from stealing from me? Did she think about my kid's Christmas when she took that money? She didn't care about anyone but herself." He didn't have much to say after that. Typical. He just mumbled something about hoping we could work it out and hung up. I was so frustrated I had to step outside just to breathe for a minute. Family can really push your buttons in ways no one else can, you know? Meanwhile, Sarah and Ryan were still on the run. The cops couldn't find them, and no one in the family seemed to know, or wanted to admit they knew, where they were. I figured they were holed up somewhere, hoping this would all blow over. But then, 2 days later, Sarah made the dumbest move possible. She came back to my house. The next morning, around 10:30 a.m., I heard a knock at the door. My first thought was, who the hell is bothering me now? I got up, peeked through the window, and nearly lost it. It was Sarah. She stood there on my porch, looking completely out of place, like she had no clue what kind of storm was about to hit her. When I opened the door and saw her standing there, looking like an absolute idiot, I didn't even think, I just acted. Before she could say a word, I punched her right in the face. It wasn't a hard punch. I didn't want to break her nose or anything. Well, maybe I did, but it was enough to let her know I wasn't here for her bullshit. She stumbled back, holding her face, and immediately tried to run. Not a chance. I grabbed her by the arm and yanked her inside the house. "Oh no, you don't!" I hissed. "We're having this conversation right now." She looked around the room like she was expecting Ryan to pop out and save her, but he was nowhere to be found. She was completely alone. I crossed my arms and stared her down. "Where's my nephew?" I demanded. She stammered something about him being with her childhood best friend Alex. I didn't believe her for a second. "Call Alex. Right now," I snapped. "I want proof." Sarah hesitated, but she must have realized I wasn't playing around, because she pulled out her phone and called Alex. A video call, because I wasn't about to take her word for it. When Alex answered, there was my nephew, safe and sound, sitting on her couch and munching on snacks. Thank God for Alex. That woman is an absolute angel, and if it weren't for her, I don't know what would have happened to that poor boy. Once I knew my nephew was safe, I turned my full attention back to Sarah. "Where's my money?" I asked, my voice low and steady. I could see her flinch at the question, but I didn't let up. Don't even think about lying to me, Sarah. Where is it? It's gone, she mumbled, barely meeting my eyes. I know it's gone, I snapped. What I want to know is where it went. That's when she gave me the dumbest, most infuriating answer I've ever heard in my life. She looked me dead in the eyes and said, Ryan and I spent it on DoorDash, going out to eat, and Mary Jane. I just stood there, staring at her, trying to process what she just said. DoorDash. She spent $3,500, my kids' Christmas money, on DoorDash and weed. Not bills, not necessities, not even something remotely understandable. She blew it all on junk food and her shitty lifestyle. She must have thought I was about to hit her again because every time I moved, she flinched. But I didn't. I just kept staring at her, letting the weight of her stupidity settle in. After what felt like an eternity, I finally said, You are a dumb bitch. Her face crumpled, and she started crying. I didn't care. She needed to hear it. Explain yourself, I demanded. Right now. Sarah started rambling, talking in circles about how she didn't know what else to do, how Ryan convinced her it was the only way, how she was desperate. I wasn't buying any of it. She didn't steal from me because she was desperate. She stole from me because she thought she could get away with it. And you thought DoorDash was the best use of my money? I snapped. You thought my kids' Christmas was less important than some fast food and weed? Do you have any idea what you've done? She just stood there crying and shaking, but I wasn't done. You didn't just steal from me, Sarah. You stole from my kids. You ruined their Christmas. You ruined everything I worked so hard to give them. And for what? A bag of food? And a high? Her sobs got louder, but again, I didn't care. I was too angry, too hurt to feel sorry for her. You're pathetic, I said. Absolutely pathetic. And if you think for 1 second I'm going to let you off the hook for this, you're even dumber than I thought. I took a step back and let out a deep breath, trying to calm myself down. Here's what's going to happen, I said, pointing at her. You're going to leave my house right now. You're going to stay gone. And you're going to deal with the cops when they come for you. Because make no mistake, Sarah, I'm pressing charges. She looked at me like I just ripped her heart out. You can't do that, she said. You can't call the cops on your own sister. Watch me, I said. Sarah was still standing in my living room, looking like a deer caught in headlights. The audacity of her even showing up at my house after everything was mind-blowing. But what she said next took things to a level I wasn't prepared for. I wasn't looking for your money, she mumbled. I was looking for your handgun. The sound of my heart pounding in my chest was the only thing to be heard. My handgun? She was looking for my handgun? I carry it with me everywhere because I have a concealed carry license, and the idea of her or Ryan getting their hands on it made my blood run cold. What the fuck are you talking about, Sarah? I asked, my voice sharp enough to cut glass. She fidgeted, avoiding eye contact. Ryan thought we could use it to go to my old job and, scare them a little. Get revenge for firing me. I stared at her, dumbfounded. Are you kidding me right now? You were going to take my gun to threaten someone at your old job? What the hell is wrong with you? She stammered something about how it wasn't really her idea, how Ryan convinced her it was the only way to make things right, but I wasn't buying it. You're a grown-ass woman, Sarah, I snapped. You don't get to hide behind Ryan. You made a choice, just like you made a choice to steal from me. Then something clicked in my brain. Why were you fired anyway? I asked. You told everyone it was because of layoffs. Her face flushed, and she started stammering again, trying to come up with an excuse, but I wasn't letting her off the hook. Tell me the truth, Sarah. Right now. She finally broke. Okay, fine, she said, crossing her arms like a petulant teenager. I got fired because me and a few coworkers were taking stuff from the registers. My jaw hit the floor. You mean stealing? I said, my voice dripping with disbelief. You were stealing. It wasn't that much, she muttered. And we weren't even paid enough anyway. We wanted free merchandise since the discount wasn't enough. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She was making $19, $50 an hour at a small, family-owned grocery store, and she thought she was entitled to more? How much did you take? I demanded. About $690, she admitted, though the way she said it made me think it was probably more. And your boss let you off with just paying it back? I asked, incredulous. She nodded. Yeah, but I didn't pay it back. I couldn't. That's when Ryan said... I cut her off. Stop blaming Ryan. This is your mess, Sarah. And you just keep making it worse. She looked down at the floor, her lip trembling like she wanted to cry again. But I wasn't done. And why were you evicted? I asked. Let me guess. You couldn't pay rent, right? Her head snapped up, and she looked panicked. That wasn't my fault, she said quickly. The landlord didn't like Ryan staying there. I raised an eyebrow. What does that have to do with anything? She hesitated before finally admitting the truth. I told the landlord that if he didn't let Ryan stay, I'd get some people to rough him up. I couldn't help but laugh, not because it was funny, but because I was so disgusted that I didn't know what else to do. So you threatened your landlord, I said. That's why you got evicted? She nodded, her face flushed with shame. He filed a police report and gave me 10 days to leave. I stared at her, absolutely floored by the sheer stupidity of her action. And where was your son during all of this? I asked, my voice cold. He was with Alex, she said quietly. Ryan didn't want him around, so I dropped him off there. That was it. That was the moment I snapped. All the anger, frustration, and betrayal that had been building up inside me exploded. You abandoned your son? I yelled. You dumped him on Alex so you could run around with Ryan, stealing and threatening people? She tried to say something, but I wasn't done. Do you even realize what a terrible mother you are? You don't deserve that kid, Sarah. He's better off with Alex. Hell, he's better off with anyone but you. I told her right then and there that I was going to help Alex get custody of her son. He deserves better, I said. And you clearly can't provide that. She started sobbing harder, but I was unmoved. You're going to jail, I told her. And Ryan is too. I'm done protecting you. You've brought this all on yourself. At this point, I was yelling so loud that I'm pretty sure the neighbors heard me. A few minutes later, there was a knock at the door. I opened it to find 2 police officers standing there, looking concerned. Is everything okay? One of them asked. We had a call from one of your neighbors about a disturbance. I was going to do that anyway. So, thank you to my neighbors. The officers looked between the two of us, clearly trying to assess the situation. Do you need any assistance? One of them asked. I looked back at Sarah, and I felt my anger surge again. No, everything is not okay, I said, my voice steady but firm. Let me tell you exactly what's going on. I proceeded to lay it all out for the officers. How Sarah and her boyfriend Ryan had stolen $3,500 from me, how I had footage of them rifling through my room, and how she had the audacity to show up at my house today, trying to weasel her way out of it. Sarah tried to interrupt, but I wasn't having it. Don't even try, I snapped at her. They'll see the footage for themselves. The officer nearest to Sarah looked at her and asked, Is this true? And then she pulled her most predictable move yet. She tried to play the victim. She gave me the money, Sarah said, her voice all shaky like she was about to cry. She just forgot. I was only here to talk things out. I nearly lost it. You're unbelievable, Sarah, I said, my voice rising. I gave you nothing. You stole it, and I've got it all on camera. The officer raised a hand to calm me. All right, let's sort this out, he said. Do you have that footage handy? I told them the previous officers already had the footage, and they nodded, noting it in their report. One officer asked Sarah for her ID and stepped outside to run her name. Less than 2 minutes later, he came back inside. Ma'am, he said to Sarah, you've got a warrant out for your arrest. I'm going to need you to stand up. Sarah's face turned white. A warrant? For what? She sputtered. For failure to pay back stolen money to your former employer, he replied. We're taking you in. I should have felt bad seeing my sister get cuffed right there in my living room, but all I felt was a deep sense of justice. Actions have consequences, and she'd been dodging hers for far too long. As the police prepared to take her outside, they searched her and found some cash in her pocket. One of the officers handed it to her and asked, Is this all you've got? Sarah, in her infinite stupidity, turned to me and said, Here, take this back. I looked at the bills. $24.76. I counted it just to be sure. Keep it, I told the officer. She's going to need it more than I do. The officer asked Sarah how she got to my house, and she reluctantly admitted that Ryan had dropped her off. Where's Ryan now? The officer asked. She hesitated before finally mumbling, He's parked around the corner. The officer went to check, and sure enough, Ryan was sitting in the car, knocked out like he didn't have a care in the world. When they woke him up and ran his name, they found his record was even worse than Sarah's. He was cuffed on the spot and tossed into the back of another squad car. With both of them finally out of my house, I closed the door and let out a long breath. I should have felt relief, but instead, I just felt exhausted. How did it even get to this point? Sarah's mom, who, for the record, isn't my mom, called me later that night and lit into me like I was the villain of the century. How could you do this to her? She screeched. She's your sister. You're ruining her life. I let her finish her rant before calmly replying, If you'd raised her right, maybe we wouldn't be here. But you didn't, and now she's my problem. And trust me, I'm handling it. She called me a bitch and hung up. I blocked her number immediately. If she wanted to bail Sarah out, she could do it on her own dime. I wasn't lifting a finger to help anymore. The court hearings wrapped up last week, and let me tell you, it was a ride watching Sarah try to weasel her way out of accountability. The judge wasn't having any of it. Between the footage of her and Ryan breaking into my room, her own recorded confession about looking for my handgun, and the testimony from her former employer about her stealing from the grocery store, she didn't have a leg to stand on. Her crocodile tears and excuses about doing it for her son fell on deaf ears. The sentencing came down to this. Sarah was sentenced to 18 months in jail and was also ordered by the court to pay restitution. This sentence came for theft and breaking and entering, with a possibility of parole after 12 months if she demonstrates good behavior. Ryan, on the other hand, got hit harder, 2.5 years behind bars for his prior record and involvement in the whole scheme. Apparently, his record had more skeletons than we knew about, including outstanding warrants for fraud and possession of stolen property. The best news out of all of this? Alex now has full custody of my nephew. The court didn't even hesitate once the truth came out about Sarah abandoning him while on the run with Ryan. Between that and the testimonies from family and the neighbors who'd seen Alex taking care of him, it was clear Alex was the best choice. For all the chaos Sarah caused, I'm glad this chapter of my life is over. She'll be spending her Christmas in jail. As for me, I might not be able to give them the kind of Christmas I'd planned. The big gifts I'd saved for were gone, and there was no getting them back. But as I sat there, I made a promise to myself. I'd do better, not just as a provider, but as their mom. So Reddit, if you're wondering if it was worth it, yes, it absolutely was. My sister tried to take everything from me, but in the end, justice won. Now I can finally focus on what really matters, my family and my future.